Hello and welcome back to Just Meg Elise, a podcast about healing, remembering who you are, and diving into deeper alignment. I'm Meg, and I'll be your host. During today's episode, since July 30th is International Friendship Day, I wanted to talk about how to be a good friend, even when life is a lot. So friendship isn't about just being there when it's easy. It's about being present, honest, and imperfect together. Being a good friend doesn't mean that you're perfect. It means that you're showing up with care and emotional maturity. So I want to talk about some of the things that friendships really need. Obviously, we need to be checking in with our friends. How are you? How's your day going? How's your week going? Checking in with them as often as we can. Just like how we often check in with romantic partners. Sometimes we tend to put our friends on the back burner, almost thinking like they're fine, but they still need our attention. They still deserve our attention in order to feel loved and supported, just like we deserve that as well. And also, we need to start to practice the power of listening without trying to fix. I think a lot of us default to, myself included, have defaulted in the past to when a friend is telling us something that's going wrong in their life, we're trying to help them. We want to help them. We want to help them get through that. So we're like thinking of all the ways, okay, well, you can do this, you can do this, you can do this. And we're spitting that out to them the second that they're talking about their issues. That's great that you're that type of friend who's wanting to help your friend. However, most people in those situations when they're just telling you something hard that they're going through, they don't necessarily want advice. They just want your presence and they want validation in their experiences. So most of the time, it might be better to lead with something like, I'm so sorry that you're going through that. You don't deserve that. Just giving them validation in their experience. And just telling them you don't deserve what you're going through. That right there is the core of what most people want. That's what I want. It's not something grandiose that I'm looking for from my friends. I just want, it's almost like I'm looking for somebody to say, you don't deserve what you're going through, and I love you, and I will be here for you regardless. Now, some people do want advice, and normally they'll say, hey, what do you think? Can you give me some advice on this? Or you're welcome to ask. I've had friends who, when I'm going through a tough time, like before they respond, after I kind of tell them my story, I had this one friend and I really appreciated this of her. She goes, are you looking for just presence right now and for somebody to be there for you, or are you looking for advice? I can give you either. And I really appreciated her asking that. And I said, just to listen, like I've already, gotten it figured out in my mind. And then after she kind of validated my experiences, I said, well, I could tell you, what I'm thinking and then get your advice. But really all I needed was somebody to say, I'm so sorry you're going through that. You don't deserve that. I love you very much. That's all. And we tend to, again, we go into fixer mode first, and that's lovely. That's lovely that you want to help them. And most people are going to see that that's out of love. But at the same time, sometimes it becomes almost like an isolating feeling when we're telling somebody what we're going through and all that they're coming at us with is solutions. Well, did you think of this? Did you think of this? And it's like, yes, you're overwhelming me right now. That can be very overwhelming. And all that they're sometimes looking for is just validation in their experience. And for you to just be present and be there with them and to listen and to let them tell their story and just listen. And that's another thing we sometimes tend to do is when somebody's telling their story, especially if it's a really heavy story, we can sometimes be like, oh yeah, I went through that as well, blah, 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 and start to name our story. And I get that. I get why we do that. I do it. It's like we're trying to validate that I get what you're going through because I've been through it too. But sometimes, unfortunately, that can be misinterpreted as we're not paying attention to them and we're centering our own experience on their side of things. Because imagine if it was reversed. Imagine if you're talking to somebody about this really hard situation that you're going through right now and you really want to talk it through and you have a lot to say and you're talking to a friend and all of a sudden they go, yeah, I totally get it. And actually last Tuesday, blah, 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 and they change the subject and all of a sudden it's about them and what's happening with them. It can feel like, am I not important? Like, I wanted to talk to my friend about this. Am I not important? So just taking a pause and trying not to interject with our own stories in that moment can be really helpful. It's okay to later on, after they've kind of talked through it and after we've comforted them and given them validation, that we then tell our story. That's okay. Or asking if they want advice after that point. But I think that what a lot of us do, especially neurodivergent people, we tend to try and interject our own stories. And again, I get that it's out of love and you're trying to relate to them to say, listen, I've been through that too. I get that. But sometimes it doesn't come across that way, especially when they're in a really tough moment and trying to share something really that's weighing on them with you. And we have to start to treat our friendships the same as we do our romantic relationships, because they both require care and consistency and attention. They require texting and checking in and asking how you are and asking things about them, not just unloading our own stuff all the time. Yes, that's what friends are for. We go back and forth, we support each other, but just recognizing if there's sometimes an imbalance. I think when I was younger, I tended to unload a lot of my own stuff without checking in with my friend. And I realize now how unbalanced that was. So that is something that I've been working on throughout the years. And also, life gets hard and we become very overwhelmed. And sometimes some people aren't that great at communication and they can't communicate when they're going through a rough time. And I get that. But please recognize that ghosting your friends when you're overwhelmed can be very confusing for them. And it's sometimes, even though we're overwhelmed, if we withdraw from our friends and we don't communicate why we're withdrawing or what we're going through, our friends can tend to think they've done something wrong, especially if they're texting you and checking in and they're not getting any response, or they're getting a very little response. It can start to feel like they've done something wrong, or, and it's not fair for us to do that to our friends when it's just a lack of communication or a lack of clarity. And again, I'm trying to practice this myself. A lot of times when I become overwhelmed, I retreat. And I become very isolated, and that's just how I handle things. But I'm trying to become better at telling people, even if I'm overwhelmed in that moment and I don't have the capacity to text them, just literally saying via text, I'm overwhelmed right now, I still care about you, I'll text you later. That sort of thing. Sometimes you'll have friends who are like, well, I'm here for you. If you want to talk, I'm here for you, and that's lovely. But it's just communicating with our friends, keeping the communication line open, just like you would a romantic partnership. If you're withdrawing from your romantic partner, they're going to wonder what's wrong. They're going to wonder, have I done something wrong? So normally we communicate with them like, no, I'm just overwhelmed right now. I'm stressed right now. I need a day. I need a week, whatever it is. And we communicate those things. We need to do the same for our friendships. We have to do the same for our friendships, for those friendships to last and to be the deep reciprocal relationships that we're wanting. We all get overwhelmed, but our friendships, along with our romantic partnerships, deserve communication. And that's the key. Communicate when you can't show up fully, because otherwise ghosting a friend when they're reaching out, it's going to make them feel like they've done something wrong when they haven't necessarily. It's just something that you're going through. That's a whole nother topic. If they have done something wrong, we need to find a way to communicate that with them. And we've talked about this in previous episodes, how to properly communicate. And I can go into deeper details about that if you'd like. Just leave me a comment about your specific question. But we all get overwhelmed, remembering we all might not handle everything perfectly, and that's okay because we're imperfect human beings. Giving yourself grace for that, but also trying to communicate where you can. Even if it's just to say, I'm sorry, I'm overwhelmed right now. I'll get back to you when I can. But also realizing that if we are imperfect and we've ghosted somebody, or we've isolated ourselves, or, not responded to their last few text messages, realizing that that person may deserve an apology from us. I remember, I'll give you an example. When I lost my father and I was deep in shock and grief, I started pushing away certain friendships. I couldn't even tell you why. Looking back, I couldn't tell you why. I think it was just a deep overwhelm. I just didn't have the capacity to keep up with the relationships in my life. And that's valid. That's a valid experience, but also it's important to recognize the other person's experience in that situation. Because after I started feeling better and I reached back out to those friends, I had to apologize to them. I had to say, listen, I'm so sorry that I retreated. I'm so sorry that I self-isolated and that I didn't communicate with you. I love you. They still deserved an apology after those things. Our actions are sometimes understandable. There are reasons why humans react a certain way or retreat or ghost. There are explanations for that. But as we talked about last week, impact also matters. Our impact on others also matters. Yes, intention matters, what our intention was in that situation, but impact also matters. And that's why our friends, if we've made a mistake, because all of us make mistakes, them included, all of us make mistakes, they might deserve an apology after we've made a misstep. Just like our romantic relationships might also deserve an apology if we've made a misstep. Just like we would be owed an apology if our romantic partner or our friend made a misstep. Okay? So I wanted to also share a personal story about a friend and how their actions kind of taught me something and helped me to become a better friend. One of my friends, she cancels on me like 80% of the time. Seriously, that is not an exaggeration. I think 3 out of 4 times that we schedule to get together, she cancels 3 out of those 4 times. It was really hurting my feelings. I started to feel like, is it me? Does she not want to hang out with me? Is she just doing it out of guilt? Like those sort of thoughts start to come up, right? And all of us cancel. All of us have canceled plans before. I have canceled plans before. And sometimes my reasons for canceling, I feel, looking back, could have been mitigated, but I was just like tired or lazy or didn't want to get out of bed, whatever it was, and so I canceled. Now I realize how important it is to show up for my friends. When she was canceling on me so often, I finally ended up coming to her and telling her, like, this really hurts my feelings. It makes me feel like you don't want to be my friend, you don't want to hang out with me, you're just doing it out of obligation, like telling her all of the things that my mind was coming up with to get answers on that. And I remember she immediately got defensive, and that was hard. I did not get an apology, it was just defensiveness, excuses. And I get the excuses are valid sometimes. Sometimes we really don't feel good. I get that. But there was a lot of times where she would cancel and I felt like the reason definitely could have been mitigated. I have a lot of lower back problems because of an injury when I was 16 years old. And so a lot of times my back hurts, but I'll try and do some stretches or take in a leave or put a patch on, like some sort of pain patch to mitigate that, to try and still show up for people. There was times in my past where I would cancel because of that reason, but now I realize I really have to try and push through for people. Because to have community, I heard this quote recently and it was glorious. To have community, you have to sometimes be inconvenienced. To have good community, you will sometimes be inconvenienced. And that just means sometimes people do need for us to show up for them. And yeah, sometimes we don't want to. We want to keep laying in bed. We want to keep just watching TV. We don't want to leave the house on a Saturday or a Thursday night or whatever it is. But to be a good friend, we have to show up for people even when it's hard. Even when it's hard. And one tip I'll give you for that, in case it's helpful, is like sometimes I really love going to yoga, but sometimes when the class comes, I'm comfy, I'm in my PJs, my makeup's off, I'm sitting on the couch, I'm nice and cozy, and I'm like, I don't want to leave the house, I don't want to go to yoga. One thing that really helped me, and somebody gave me this tip, is just go put your yoga clothes on. That's it. I'm not telling you to go, just go put your clothes on. When I took that step of just putting my yoga clothes on, I would always end up going because my mind is like, well, I already got them on, I'm already here, I'm already ready to go, why not just go? I love yoga, I know I'm going to have a good time, why not just go? What if you enacted the same policy for saying your friends? Just go put your clothes on. Just go put your clothes on. You don't have to do your hair, you don't have to do your makeup, just go put your clothes on and then see how you feel. Because sometimes it's just like, we stop ourselves from going or we cancel because we don't want to get out of that comfy, cozy, scenario that we're in, whether we're sitting on the couch or watching TV or whatever it is. But it's if we just slightly change the environment, sometimes that small thing allows us to follow through, So that's my tip for you on that. And also, my mom told me this once, and I thought it was such good advice. She said, if you want to have a good friend, you have to be a good friend. And that was really lovely advice and still stands true to this day. Truly, if you want a good friend, if you want a reciprocal friend, somebody who communicates with you, somebody who shows up for you, somebody who's there when you need them, you have to do that for them as well. Sometimes we expect our friends to just be like unconditionally loving and unconditionally there for us, but we don't ask, am I doing that for them? Am I being that person for them? Because it's reciprocal, right? It's give and take. It's ebb and flow. Sometimes they're going to dominate the conversation because they're going through something rough. Sometimes we'll dominate the conversation because we're going through something rough. It's give and it's take, and that's okay. But just remembering to keep it balanced and to keep it even and to check in with ourselves. Am I being a good friend to them? And also, just a few tips on how to be a better friend. I do love checking in with your friends when they're going through something difficult and possibly even asking them, what do you need right now? Do you need a hug? Do you need to scream into a pillow together? Do you need to go out, us to go out for drinks? Do you want to just get out of the house? Do you just need for me to listen? Do you want some advice? Asking them what they need. We would do that for a romantic partner. Let's say your partner came home from work and they had a bad day. You would most likely be like, is there anything I can do for you? Can I get you a beer? Can we watch some TV together? Do you need a massage? Do you need to talk through stuff? Doing the same things for our friends. They need that. They deserve that. and so do we. And we're not going to get that if we don't give that. And trying to normalize being honest even when we don't have the capacity. Just simply saying, I'm overwhelmed right now, I'll get back to you when I can. That communication goes such a long way. Friendship requires upkeep, just like romantic partnerships. We need to show up, we need to send the text, we need to ask about their life and hold space for them. And we also need to honor when our friendships deserve repair. Saying I'm sorry is not going to hurt you. I know, sometimes our pride gets in the way of saying I'm sorry, or we start to spiral into thoughts of shame, like because I made a mistake, I'm bad, and therefore I'm a bad person. Like, you have to start to notice the thoughts that are coming up when you've made a mistake and try and speak back to those thoughts. No, I'm not a horrible person. I've just made a mistake, and mistakes are human. And apologizing for that mistakes, I'm not going to die. It's not going to kill me. I think especially when I was younger, I had a hard time apologizing because it was like admitting that I was flawed. God forbid I be flawed. Oh no, we can't do that. We can't have that. And it's so silly now looking back. Everybody is flawed. Everybody makes mistakes. You are going to make mistakes today, tomorrow, the next day, and so is your friend. And sometimes those mistakes require an apology to somebody else, just to acknowledge any hurt that we may have caused with our mistake. And that's okay. And most people, if they love you, they are going to fully accept that and say, thank you so much for telling me that. I appreciate that. And I love you and I forgive you. And no worries. And move on. But it's when we don't acknowledge those things that things can start to fester. And then resentment builds. And then that's when relationships can start to break down. So you guys know I love journaling, so I have some journaling prompts for this topic. What does being a good friend mean to me right now? Who are the people I feel safest with in my life? And naming those and trying to spend more time with those people. That's another thing. There are going to be certain friends who you'll notice you feel uplifted around. You feel more loved and more excited and more joyous when you spend time with them and afterwards. Keeping a mental note of that, because those are the type of people you should be around. But there's also going to be friends, let's be honest, who when you're around them, you feel depleted, tired, exhausted when you leave. They don't give you that joyous, uplifting feeling. But just making a note of that over time and noticing the patterns with those friends and how they make you feel overall. And here's my last journaling prompt for you. Is there a friendship I want to nurture or repair? And can I work on doing that? So noticing if there is any place that possibly apologies are needed and addressing that so that they don't fester. It's okay to communicate with our friends. It's okay to bring up something and say, hey, listen, this thing happened and I don't know if it hurt your feelings and I just want to address it in case it did. Because if it did, I just want you to know I'm so sorry and I love you. It's okay to say that. It's okay to ask our friends, hey, this thing, did that hurt your feelings? And if so, I'm really sorry. Just trying to place ourselves in other people's shoes, realizing if they did that to me, would it hurt me? Okay, then it probably hurt them too. And just offering an apology. Our friendships are sacred and we need to treat them as such. It's okay to keep learning, keep growing, and keep showing up imperfectly. We are imperfect human beings. We all get overwhelmed, and because life is hard, especially right now. But we must communicate through those times. Friendship doesn't require perfection, but it does require our conscious effort. We don't need to be perfect. We just need to care enough to try again. So thank you so much for joining me this week. Hopefully you enjoyed today's episode. And if you want to go deeper on your healing journey, there are many different ways to connect. My book, Don't You Dare, is available for purchase on Amazon. If you want to dive deeper into the ego voice or shadow work, go ahead and pick up a copy. I think it's a wonderful tool for that. I also have my Most Loved Meditation Bundle. These are my highest rated meditations over the years, and everything that I'm talking about is going to be linked below in the show description notes. I also offer one-on-one coaching and hypnotherapy services. If you're interested in a session with me, please visit my website, meganshirey.com, meganshirey.com. I also teach a free live guided meditation every Sunday on the Insight Timer app at 10 a.m. Eastern, 9 Central, 8 Mountain, 7 Pacific. If you enjoy these episodes, please like, share, comment, and subscribe, and please leave us a review. It helps us to reach more listeners. May you be happy, may you be well, may you be joyous and at ease, sending you infinite love and light, and until next time.